I still remember the Sunday morning they told me not to come to church anymore. Not strangers, not neighbors, my own family. I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking my coffee the way I always do. 2 sugars, 1 cream. The same mug I've used for years. The one my husband gave me before he passed. The phone buzzed on the table. It was my daughter-in-law, Lisa. I thought she was calling to remind me about the service time. But her voice was soft. Too soft. The kind that makes your stomach twist before you even know why. She said, "Mom, we think maybe you shouldn't come to church with us today." At first, I thought I'd heard her wrong. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Is something wrong with the car? I can drive myself," she sighed. "It's not that. It's just the kids feel like sometimes you make them uncomfortable. You talk too loud during service, and Pastor mentioned last week that maybe you could watch from home sometimes." I froze. I didn't even know what to say. My throat tightened. "Watch from home," I repeated. "You mean on the live stream?" She said, "Yes, just for now, until things settle a bit. We don't want people to think." She trailed off. "Think what?" I whispered. There was silence on the other end. Then she said, "You just embarrass them sometimes, Mom. That's all. It's nothing personal. Embarrass them." The words hit me like cold water down my back. I wanted to ask what I'd done. Was it my voice, my clothes, my old stories? Did I stand too long when the choir sang? I didn't know. All I knew was that I'd been going to that church for 40 years. I'd watched my son get baptized there. My daughter walk down the aisle. My husband's casket roll down that same center aisle. And now, I was being told not to come. I hung up the phone and sat there in silence for a long time. The coffee went cold. The clock ticked loud on the wall. You'd think after all these years, rejection would stop hurting. But when it comes from your own blood, your own children, it cuts deeper than anything else. I looked out the window. The street was quiet. The church bell rang in the distance, like it always does at 10. I could almost see the people gathering. The same pews, the same voices, the same hymns. Only this time, my seat would be empty. I thought about getting dressed anyway, about showing up and pretending like nothing happened. But something inside me stopped. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to force myself where I clearly wasn't wanted. So I stayed home. I put my Bible on the table, opened to the page where I'd left off, and tried to read. But the words swam in front of me. I couldn't focus. My heart felt like someone had taken it out and left it on that cold table beside the cup of coffee I never finished. That afternoon, my son called. His voice was tight, formal. "Mom, Lisa told me she talked to you." "Yes," I said quietly. He sighed. "Please don't take it the wrong way. It's just, sometimes you draw attention. You know how small towns can be. People talk." I laughed a little, even though my eyes were wet. "People have been talking all my life, son. It never bothered me before." He didn't respond. He just said, "Let's talk later, okay?" and hung up. And just like that, after 68 years of Sundays, after raising him in that same church, after giving that community every ounce of me, I became an outsider. It's strange how silence fills a house when you're not expecting it. That day it felt like the walls were breathing. Every creak, every tick felt louder. Later that evening, I took out an old photo album. Pictures from Easter Sundays, baptisms, Christmas plays. There was one picture I stopped on. My son as a little boy, sitting on my lap in his church clothes, holding the Bible upside down but smiling at me. I touched his face in the picture and whispered, "When did we forget what this place meant to us?" The tears came slow and steady, not loud, not wild, just quiet, like rain on the window. And as the sun went down, I realized something. Sometimes the people you raised to know love and grace grow up to forget what both look like. That night I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the old house breathing, the radiator ticking, the wind brushing against the curtains, the faint hum of the fridge down the hall. Funny how those little noises become your company when you've been alone long enough. I turned on my side, facing the picture of my husband on the nightstand. Henry. He'd passed 12 years ago, but somehow, every hard moment since then still made me whisper to him, as if he could hear me. I said, "You'd never believe this. Henry, our own son doesn't want me in church anymore. Says I embarrass them." The words sounded strange in the dark, like they didn't belong in this world. I closed my eyes and imagined him sitting beside me, shaking his head the way he used to when something upset him. "You didn't embarrass anyone, Ruth," he'd probably say. "You just reminded them where they came from." I smiled faintly, then turned back to the wall. But the truth settled heavy in my chest. No amount of love could make people remember who you used to be to them. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Old habits don't die easy. I put on my church dress anyway, the blue one with the little white flowers. Brushed my hair and made myself breakfast. I didn't have anywhere to go, but it felt wrong to sit there in my robe when I knew the world outside was already moving. As I buttered my toast, I looked out the window and saw Mrs. Carter walking her dog. She waved and I waved back, forcing a smile. I wondered if she knew. Word travels fast in small towns. Later that day, around noon, I got a knock on the door. It was Pastor Lewis. My heart jumped. I invited him in, trying to hide the mess of tissues on the table. He smiled politely, his voice gentle. "Ruth, I wanted to check on you. We missed you at service yesterday." I gave a dry laugh. "Oh, I bet you did." He looked down, uncomfortable. "Your son mentioned there were some feelings. I just wanted to make sure you're all right." "Feelings," I said softly. "That's what we're calling it now?" He didn't know what to say. I could see the struggle on his face, the tension between kindness and obligation. "Pastor," I said, "I've been a member of that church since before you even started preaching. I scrubbed those floors. I cooked for the potlucks. I taught Sunday school for 10 years. I sang in the choir until my voice gave out. You remember that?" He nodded. "Of course I do, Ruth. You've been a blessing to our community." "Then why am I suddenly an embarrassment?" He hesitated. "It's not about that. You're passionate. You speak your mind. Some people just don't understand that kind of honesty anymore." I sighed. "People have gotten softer, Pastor. Or maybe colder. I don't know which." He reached out, put a hand on mine. "Maybe take a few weeks. Come back when you're ready." I looked him in the eyes. "Pastor, I was always ready. It's them who weren't." He didn't argue. Just nodded, gave me a small smile and said, "You're always welcome, Ruth. Remember that." But his words felt like something said to ease a conscience, not to heal a wound. After he left, I sat there for a long time. I thought about walking to the church myself, standing in the back pew like a shadow, just to feel something again. But my legs didn't move. Instead, I opened the old Bible on the table, the one with the frayed edges and coffee stains. Henry's handwriting was still on the inside cover. "For Ruth, keep the faith." I traced the words with my finger. Keep the faith. I wondered what that really meant now. Was faith just something we kept tucked inside, even when no one wanted us around? Or was it something that lived in the open, even if it embarrassed people? That evening, my granddaughter, Emily, called. She's 16, sweet girl, full of life, always reminding me of myself when I was younger. "Grandma," she said, her voice small. "I heard Mom talking about church. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to feel bad." "Oh, honey," I said, forcing a chuckle. "You didn't do anything wrong." She hesitated. "They just think you talk too much during service. And sometimes when you tell stories, people look." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Well, maybe that's because I've lived long enough to have stories worth telling." She giggled. "I know, Grandma. I like your stories. That one line, it warmed me more than she'll ever know. We talked for a while about her school, her friends, her plans for college. And as she spoke, I realized something. The church might have turned its back. My family might have pushed me aside. But the love between a grandmother and a grandchild, that still had roots deep enough to survive. When we hung up, I sat by the window and watched the sunset. The sky turned pink and gold, and I whispered a quiet prayer, not the kind I used to say, not for blessings or forgiveness, but just for understanding. Lord, I said softly, if this is my path, help me walk it with grace. I thought of the church bell ringing without me there, of the pew where I used to sit, second row from the front, right beside the window. I could almost feel the sunlight through the glass, hear the choir in the distance, smell the old wooden benches polished every Saturday, and for a moment, I let myself believe that faith isn't about where you sit or who sees you. It's about whether you still sing when no one's listening. That night, I slept better. The ache didn't go away, but it settled, like an old wound that's learned how to live with the weather. Still deep down, I hoped maybe one day they'd realize what they'd done. That maybe, when they looked around that church and saw that empty pew, they'd remember the woman who once filled it with stories, laughter, and faith. But hope can be a heavy thing to hold when the hands that used to lift you now push you away. A week went by, and I kept telling myself I was fine, that I didn't need to go back to that church, that I could worship right here in my little living room with my Bible and my memories. But Sunday came again, and when the bells started ringing, I felt that old pull in my chest. It wasn't the same as it used to be. Not excitement, not even habit. Just longing. The kind that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. I put down my teacup and stood at the window. Across the street, I could see a few cars driving slowly toward the church. Families dressed in their Sunday best. Mothers adjusting their children's collars. Fathers holding the doors open. And I stood there in my robe, clutching my mug like it was something to hold me steady. I told myself, Ruth, don't you dare cry. But I did anyway, quietly. Not because they didn't want me there, but because I still wanted to be. Later that afternoon, I went for a walk. Just to clear my head, I said. But somehow, my feet led me toward the church. It wasn't planned. Maybe it was habit. Or maybe my heart still remembered the path better than I did. The parking lot was empty by then. Just a few leaves blowing across the pavement. The big oak tree beside the building had lost most of its color. I stood there, looking up at the church door. That same white door I'd walked through hundreds of times before. I could still picture the Christmas wreaths they'd hang every December, and the hand-painted sign that used to say, "Welcome all." I sat down on the steps. My knees didn't like it, but I sat anyway, and then I prayed. Not out loud this time, just silently, God. I said in my heart, you've seen me in this place through every season of my life. Baptisms, funerals, weddings, potlucks. And now, even when they've closed the door, I'm still here. So maybe it's not their house I'm missing. Maybe it's yours. I stayed there for a long time until the sun began to fade. Then I got up slowly and started the walk home. On the way, I passed by the little bakery on Main Street. The one with the cinnamon rolls that always smell like heaven itself. I hadn't been in there for years, but something drew me in. Inside, the warm air hit me like a hug. Behind the counter was a young woman I didn't recognize. She smiled at me right away. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Can I help you?" I smiled back. "Just one cinnamon roll, dear. And maybe some company." She laughed gently. "You've got both." Her name was Lily. We got to talking like old friends do even when they just met. She told me she'd recently moved to town trying to start over, and I don't know what came over me. But I started telling her about the church, about my family, about how it felt to be left behind. She didn't interrupt or look uncomfortable. She just listened, really listened. When I finished, she said softly, "That's cruel. No one deserves to feel unwelcome in the place that taught them love." Her words hit me deep. I sipped my coffee and said, "Maybe that's what love is now. Smaller moments, quieter ones, like this." She smiled. "You're always welcome here, Ruth. You can sit at that table every Sunday if you want." And I did. For the next few weeks, that little bakery became my new pew. I'd sit there every Sunday morning with a cinnamon roll and my Bible, while church bells rang faintly in the distance. Sometimes Lily would sit with me when things weren't too busy. Sometimes she'd bring me an extra pastry. "On the house," she'd say with a wink. I started writing again too. Nothing fancy, just thoughts, reflections, bits of prayers that didn't sound like prayers anymore, but something in between gratitude and grief. One morning, as I sat there scribbling in my old notebook, I saw someone familiar walk in, Pastor Lewis. He looked surprised to see me, then relieved. "Ruth," he said softly, approaching my table. "I've been meaning to stop by again. The congregation's been asking about you." I smiled faintly. "Oh, have they? Or did they just notice their favorite gossip wasn't around?" He chuckled awkwardly. "No, really. People miss you." I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "Sit, Pastor. Tell me what brings you here." He sat down, folding his hands neatly. "Truthfully, Ruth, I've been thinking a lot about what happened. About how maybe we failed you." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a strong word for a man of faith," he sighed. "Sometimes the church forgets it's supposed to be a home for the broken, not a showcase for the perfect. You've always brought honesty and warmth to our congregation. Losing that, it showed me something." I felt my throat tighten. "You really mean that?" "I do," he said. "And I think, when you're ready, you should come back. Not because anyone's asking you to, but because the church needs people like you. The ones who don't just believe, but live their faith." I stared at him for a long time. Then I said quietly, "I'll think about it." He nodded, stood up, and before leaving said, "And if you do come back, Ruth, you'll find your seat still waiting for you." When he left, I looked down at my cinnamon roll and laughed softly. Life has a strange way of bringing things back around, doesn't it? That night, I told Emily about it over the phone. "Grandma," she said excitedly, "are you really going back to church?" I smiled. "Maybe. But this time, I'll go for me. Not for anyone else." She paused, then said, "I'll come with you. Mom can't stop me." That made me laugh, loud and warm. "Oh, sweetheart, you don't need to defy anyone for me." But I'd love that. The next Sunday, I did go back. Not to stay, not to prove a point, just to see if the walls still felt like home. When I walked in, heads turned. A few people whispered. But then, something unexpected happened. The organist smiled. The choir waved. A couple of old friends nodded gently, tears glistening in their eyes. I took my seat in the second row by the window. Same spot as always. The sunlight hit my hands just like it used to. And for a while, I just breathed. I didn't sing that morning. I didn't need to. The hymns carried me anyway. After the service, Pastor Lewis came over and said quietly, "It's good to see you, Ruth." I smiled back. "It's good to be seen." When I walked home that day, the air felt different, lighter somehow, like forgiveness had a scent, and I'd finally caught it. That evening after I came home from church, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and just watched the light fade. The world outside was quiet, that golden hour when everything looks softer, when even the air seems to remember kindness. I thought about the people I saw that morning. Some of them had looked guilty, some had smiled, and some had just looked surprised to see me still breathing, still walking, still showing up. But I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I just felt tired, but peaceful. You know, there's a strange kind of strength that comes when you stop waiting for people to fix what they broke, when you decide to live anyway. even with the cracks showing. Later that night, I got a message from my daughter, Anne, the same one who'd told me not to come to church anymore. Her message was short. "Mom, I heard you went back to church today. I think it's better if you don't make things harder for everyone." I read it twice. Then I put the phone down. A few months ago, that would have broken me. I would have written back paragraphs of hurt, trying to explain, trying to make her understand. But that night, I didn't reply. I just whispered to myself, "It's not harder for everyone. It's just harder for you." Then I prayed for her. Not for her to change, but for her to find the peace I was starting to feel. The next morning, I woke up early and baked cinnamon rolls, not because I was expecting anyone, but because it made the house smell warm again. While they cooled, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, there stood Emily, holding a small bag and smiling nervously. "Morning, Grandma," she said. "I brought you something." I stepped aside and let her in, my heart swelling just at the sight of her. She pulled out a small photo album. "I made this for you." When I opened it, my breath caught. Inside were pictures from all the family gatherings I hadn't been part of. Birthdays, holidays, church picnics. But in each photo, she had drawn a little heart where I would have been. Sometimes next to the table, sometimes near the cake, sometimes beside her. "I wanted you to know," she said softly, "that even when you weren't there, you were still with me." I couldn't hold it together. I hugged her tight, tears soaking her shoulder. "Oh, sweetheart," I whispered. "You don't know what this means to me." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I know Mom's still upset, but I wanted to see you. And I wanted you to know that I miss you every day." We spent that morning talking, laughing, remembering. I told her about the bakery, about Lily, about the cinnamon rolls that had become my new Sunday ritual. She smiled. "Maybe next Sunday, I can come too." And she did. For the next few weeks, we went to the bakery together. We sat by the window sharing pastries and stories. Sometimes we talked about faith, sometimes about family, and sometimes we just sat in silence, grateful to be together. Then one day, something unexpected happened. Anne showed up. I saw her through the bakery window first, standing outside, hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should come in. Emily noticed too and froze. "Grandma," she whispered, "Mom's here." I turned and saw her eyes, tired, red and softer than I'd seen in years. I nodded gently. "It's okay, sweetheart. Let her come." Anne slowly walked in, clutching her purse. For a moment, none of us said anything. The air felt heavy, like it was waiting. Then she said quietly, "Hi, Mom." I smiled faintly. "Hi, sweetheart." Her lips trembled. I didn't know you'd come back to church. I shouldn't have said those things." I looked at her. Really looked at her. My little girl, all grown up, carrying her own hurt, her own pride, her own confusion. "It's okay," I said softly. "You were protecting your own idea of peace. I understand." Tears filled her eyes. "But I hurt you." I reached across the table and took her hand. "And I forgave you a long time ago." She broke down right there, crying quietly like she had when she was a child. "I don't know why I let things get so bad," she whispered. "I was ashamed of how you sometimes said things out loud that others only think. I was scared of people judging us." I nodded. "I know, honey. But the truth is, love doesn't need to be perfect to be real. And I'd rather be a little embarrassing than be a stranger to my own family." She laughed softly through her tears. "You always know how to say things that stick." We sat there for a while, holding hands, the three of us. Generations of hurt, finally breathing in the same air again. From that day on, something changed. Anne started visiting me more often. Sometimes she'd bring dinner. Sometimes she'd just sit and talk. Slowly, the distance that had built up between us started to shrink. Not all at once, but piece by piece, like thawing ice. We even went back to church together one Sunday. It wasn't planned. Emily had asked if we could all go, and somehow, neither of us said no. When we walked in, people turned to look, just like before. But this time, Anne didn't flinch. She squeezed my hand instead. We sat together, me, my daughter, and my granddaughter, right there in the second row by the window. During the hymn, I closed my eyes and felt the sunlight hit my face. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt whole. After the service, Anne leaned close and whispered, "Mom, I'm glad you came back." I smiled. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." That evening, after they dropped me home, I sat on the porch and watched the sunset. The sky was painted in soft orange and pink, fading into the quiet of dusk. I thought about everything. The hurt, the distance, the forgiveness, and I realized something simple. Sometimes God doesn't fix what's broken. He just teaches us how to live gently with the cracks. Maybe that's what grace really is. I smiled, whispered a thank you, and went inside. Before going to bed, I looked at the photo album Emily made me. I traced the little hearts she'd drawn, one by one, then closed it gently and said, "Next time I'll be in the picture for real." A few months have passed since that Sunday. Life didn't suddenly turn perfect. It never does. But there's a quiet peace that sits with me now. Anne still calls me every few days. Sometimes it's just to check in, sometimes to talk about the garden, sometimes to ask for one of my old recipes she used to roll her eyes at. It's funny how time softens the edges of things we thought we'd never laugh about again. Emily comes by often too. She's growing up fast, that girl. Smart, kind, and with a heart that still believes people can change. She brings me fresh flowers whenever she can, says they make my house look alive. I tell her the house already feels alive when she's here. Last Sunday, after church, Anne and I stood outside in the sunshine. The same church she once told me not to come to. The same one that used to fill me with shame and sadness every time I passed by. We talked to some of the ladies from the congregation, shared smiles, even jokes. And I realized something while I watched my daughter laugh with them. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It just makes the weight of it easier to carry. There are still moments, though, when I sit alone at night and think about how things used to be. When the house was full, when Sundays meant everyone around the table, when laughter echoed down the hallway instead of silence. But instead of crying now, I smile, because even though life took things from me, even though time and pride and mistakes carved spaces between us, love found a way to return. It might not look the same as before. It might be smaller, quieter, but it's real. A few days ago, Anne surprised me with something. She brought over an old picture frame. Inside it was a photo of me, her, and Emily, taken just a few weeks ago, after church. We were standing by the big oak tree outside holding hands. Someone must have snapped it when we weren't paying attention, because we're all smiling so naturally. Below the picture, she'd written one simple line, "Never too late to come home." I cried when I saw that. Not the kind of crying that hurts, the kind that heals. That picture now sits on my nightstand. Every morning it's the first thing I see when I wake up. And every night it's the last thing I look at before turning off the light. You know, for a long time I thought growing old meant losing everything. Your family, your usefulness, your place in the world. But maybe it's not about losing. Maybe it's about learning what truly matters. It's about knowing that love doesn't have to be perfect, that peace doesn't mean silence, and that forgiveness isn't a gift you give others. It's one you give yourself. Sometimes I still go back to that bakery. Lily always saves me a seat by the window. We sit and talk about the small things. Her grandkids, the weather, what kind of pie she's baking next. And sometimes Anne and Emily join us. They laugh with Lily, and I watch them. My family, all together again. Not the way it used to be, but good enough to make my heart feel full. One afternoon, as we were leaving, Anne hugged me and said, "Mom, I'm sorry I let other people's opinions mean more than your love." I told her, "Sweetheart, we all make mistakes. The important thing is we keep showing up, because that's what love is, really. Not just words or pictures or perfect moments. It's showing up, even after everything's gone wrong. It's choosing to come back again and again, even when it's hard. That's what my story's about. Not the pain, not the distance, not the hurtful things said or unsaid. It's about coming back, about not letting bitterness win, about remembering that love in its purest form forgives quietly and waits patiently. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there listening tonight needs to hear that too. Maybe you've been pushed aside, forgotten, or made to feel like you don't belong anymore. But let me tell you something from one heart to another. You still matter. You always will. You are still someone's story, someone's memory, someone's home. And even if they haven't come back yet, don't lose hope, because love has a strange way of finding its way home, even after years of silence. So if you're still here, listening to me after all this time, thank you. Thank you for letting me share my story, for walking with me through the loneliness, the tears, and the peace that came after. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone, or if it helped you feel a little less alone tonight, then please, do me a small favor. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories like this. Because maybe, just maybe, the right story can remind someone that love never really leaves. It just waits quietly for us to come home. Thank you for listening. And wherever you are tonight, I hope you're surrounded by warmth, peace, and love. Good night.